How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
My guest today is Rahaf Harfoush, a digital anthropologist, strategist, and New York Times best-selling author. She's the executive director of the Red Thread Institute of Digital Culture. Red Thread is a think tank and special projects agency focused on how technology shapes culture, society, and human behavior. Rahaf also teaches innovation at Sciences Po, which is a prestigious French university known for its focus on political science, international relations, economics, law, and social sciences. Rahaf has written 3 books, including Hustle and Float, The Decoded Company, and Yes, We Did. Rahaf, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'd like to start with your role as digital anthropologist. What does it mean to be a digital anthropologist?
So, digital anthropology is the study of understanding how technology and culture really influence each other. So, how does the technology that we build, how does that influence our culture, like our beliefs, our rituals, our habits, our emotions, our norms? And then in the opposite sense, how does our culture, so all of those things we take for granted, how does that influence the type of tools that we build? And it's this alchemy that happens when these two forces impact each other.
Okay, that was a great description. So you're the executive director of the Red Thread Institute. What's the mission of Red Thread?
So red thread, it's actually an expression that I learned when I moved to Europe when I was working in Switzerland. And everyone in meetings would always say, we have to follow the red thread. We have to follow the red thread. And that basically meant that you have to make connections between things that might not be obvious. And so when you talk about digital culture, a lot of digital culture is making the invisible visible. It's peeling back the layers of the tools that you use, the features that are the defaults, the way we engage with social media, the way we engage with everything, our devices, emails, influencers. And then we say, okay, if you just take a step back, what does that actually say about our culture, about what we believe, what we value, what we respect, what we idolize? And it's this idea that if you can just take a second and identify the water that you're swimming in, that is normally invisible to you, then you can make intentional decisions about how you want to use the technology that surrounds you. And so at Red Thread, we really try to just make the invisible visible so that leaders or corporations or the governments that we work with can actually just say, okay, if we're going to make decisions about technology, we're going to make sure that we're doing it in full alignment and transparency and awareness of how it's going to impact, our workers or our colleagues or citizens.
Okay, I love that. What kinds of projects and research does Red Thread focus on, and who are they for?
I mean, I work with startups, I work with really big companies, I work with banks, with tech companies, with insurance companies, consulting companies, consumer packaged goods companies.
Hmm?
And what I really love about my job is that I am just like a digital explorer. I go out into the web, I study, I observe, I embed myself in communities, and I learn and I listen and I bring what I'm seeing back to help the people that are in these organizations trying to make decisions, just make sure that they're making the most informed decision that they can. So I don't go in saying I know everything. I don't go in saying I have all the answers. I go in saying, hey, it looks like you're interested in looking at what's attracting new recruits to companies, or how to keep motivation and focus up inside your team, or how to build best practices and policies as a government as we're trying to roll out AI across society. Let me show you some of the things that are emerging, some case studies that are happening, what other people are doing, and I'll bring that in and I will be your partner and your facilitator so that when you make these decisions, you have the full landscape. Because what I've learned when I used to work at an office job myself is that so many of us are so focused on the day-to-day, our responsibilities, our meetings, the things we have to get done, our projects. We don't have the time to go out and spend hours exploring the nuances of emerging behaviors or emerging norms. And so that's my favorite part of the job, is going out and almost being like a pollinator, seeing all the things that are happening, seeing the possibilities, the opportunities, the risks, the challenges, and then bringing them back to smart people and saying, okay, here's what I found. Let's figure out how this influences your decision making in terms of what you're going to do over the next cycle, like strategic cycle.
I see. Okay, so you do a lot of research for these companies, for your clients. Can you talk about a specific project, like for a startup, for a company, a bank, something like that? Like you mentioned, this is a specific project. Like what were they looking to do, explore? What were the decisions they wanted to make? And then what did you deliver?
Sure. So I can't say who the client is,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Part of the challenge is that a lot of these issues are, strategic and very sort of sensitive. And so I was working with an organization where they wanted to understand how community was changing, how people were engaging around topics that they really cared about. And in particular, they wanted to know what was happening outside of North America. So in our team, we did a really fascinating, like long, in-depth research project looking at different models of fandoms outside of North America that clustered around things that were adjacent to business. So, for example, like the BTS fandoms and K-pop fandoms and fanfic fandoms. And we looked at the differences culturally between how are these community touch points, how are they structured, how are they monetized, how are they used, what are the behaviors that are emerging, what is the shorthand, what are the best practices. So, for example, the K-pop industry has done a really fascinating job of marrying business with being a fan. And if you want to be a fan of, for example, BTS's fandom, which is called ARMY, you can't just sign up. You have to like pass a quiz where they ask you things like the birthday dates of the different members and like key things about the band and music. And so it's a really this like interesting active participation where the content that they produce, how they monetize that content, the revenue streams that emerge around fandom could provide some really interesting lessons to North American businesses that are like, I just want to expand my sense of what's possible in terms of how I can connect with consumers in a different way. How can I get people to be as excited about my brand? And what lessons can I learn from something like K-pop or even, for example, like the Taylor Swift fandom? And what are some of the things that you could bring in and apply in our own business? And so we did this really interesting report with all these findings, breaking down strategies and metrics and specific campaigns that had been done. And then from that, we extracted lessons and pilots that they could use to experiment in their own line of business.
Wow, this is amazing. You must learn so much from each project. Like you do this kind of basically this deep dive, right, into like BTS and Taylor Swift and the way the business works. Like you must learn so much.
I mean, I feel like I'm the luckiest person because like my hobby, like what I do in my spare time is research. I just love research. I'm always researching the most random thing, whether it's related to tech or not. Like at any point in time, if you're like, Rahaf, what are you researching right now? I will probably give you the most random answer. And so I really love research and I'm really curious and I really love people. What I love about my job is I get to really deep dive into a particular industry that sometimes is so far outside the realm of what I would do normally. Like just recently, for example, I spoke at an event that was very much focused on like dental practices, like dental clinical dental practices,
Yeah.
and really looking at what was happening in terms of emerging technologies and how VR was being used to train these new to train on dental procedures and how AI modeling was changing the way they're looking at teeth replacement and veneers and the imaging and the way, I mean, it was just so fascinating. And here I am like deep diving into like teeth science, and
Right.
I'm not even a dentist, And so I really love that part of my job because you also never know when something from one industry is going to apply in an unexpected way to a completely unrelated industry. So I really do love my job.
When you're talking to a customer, a client, new company, do you think to yourself, how am I even going to start this project? How am I going to do this research? Because some of these sound very nuanced, like they've never been done before. Like you're doing this research around BTS and business and Taylor Swift, and then the dental practices. Like this is not easy research for you to find, probably that's been done before. You might find bits and pieces. Do you think to yourself, how am I going to do this project? Is it overwhelming every time, or do you usually, you've been doing this a while, do you think I think I know the path, I know how I'm going to do this?
I don't think think I know the path. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know what I'm going to need for this project, but I'll know it when I find it.
Oh,
And that's why research has been one of the things that I have not been able to delegate in the way that I like to do it to someone else on my team or some of the other researchers that we work with. They do their own research, we collaborate, but I have to always also be doing the research because I really don't know what I'm looking for until I find it. And then I'll come across something like an obscure article
right.
or fandom or research, and then I'll be like, that's it. That's the thing that I've been looking for. And so I've learned to trust the process. It's not like I have the answers at all. And 9 times out of 10, I don't know
Right.
what I'm going to find. But to me, that's like part of the excitement. It's like a puzzle. So you get to just like go on corners of the internet and find things. And then when it fits, it feels so good because you're like, that's what I was looking for. And I would have never been able to say to a client at the beginning, this is what we're looking for. Normally, I structure it in here's the questions we're asking, and here's the questions we're going to try to answer. And I don't know where the search for answers is going to take us, but the people that work with us generally know that that's our approach. We're explorers, we're discoverers. We're not coming in saying we know everything. It's like that would be boring. So
I was
it's
just
kind of
about to say you're like an explorer.
yeah. Do you know what's so funny? Like random sidebars. One of the things I was very obsessed with a few years ago was the diaries of like travelogues, like these adventurers that went out. And so there was Burton Holmes, who was one of the first people that like went out into the world at a time when travel was really inaccessible. And he would go out and take pictures and meet people and get lost. And he would have these adventures and he'd come back and he would present in Carnegie Hall and people would pay like 30 cents to go see his like slideshow.
Oh,
And there
wow.
were all sorts of people like that. There was Isabella Bird, there was Gertrude Bell. So there was a period of time where I was like very obsessed with the idea of people going out and exploring frontiers. And when I was doing research about that dental practice client, and I was on stage and I was explaining what I had found, I had such a moment where I was like, this is my digital equivalent. I'm standing on a stage telling people about random communities online that are very obsessed with celebrity veneers. And I'm explaining this magical community that I have like found. And I just thought, wow, that's so cool. I have such a fun job.
So you're the executive director of Red Thread. What does your day-to-day look like? And you mentioned a team. So do you have a team of researchers that you work with? Like, what does the organization look like?
So we have a very like agile structure. Basically, we work with other researchers and other networks of researchers in a very like I guess a Hollywood model type of way that it was called. So when we have a big project that comes in through a client, I have like researchers that are sort of like me, smaller, and we pull them in and we say, this is the project. And I like doing it that way because sometimes if I need research in a specific language in a specific market, there's always somebody in the community that is an expert. So it avoids me having to bear the burden of being an expert on anything and everything. And it's like, oh, you want to know teen behavior in Latin America? We've got people that's their expertise that we work with, and we can just like work together with them. And then I have a very small core team of just like, an executive assistant and like a finance person. And so that's how I kind of structured it. And my day to day, honestly, it looks very, very different because when I am teaching, I'm not teaching right now, but when I am teaching, like that's a part of the job. Sometimes I'm traveling a lot for either research projects or for work. I do speaking, so I speak at conferences. I'm in research mode sometimes. I'm working on a book. So it really depends. If I was to explain to you, like, I don't know, even just the last 2 weeks, I would say not a single day really looked the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends if I'm on the road or if I'm at home, if I'm speaking or if I'm researching, if I'm writing or if I'm consulting. So every day kind of looks a little different.
So I know you're not teaching now, but you have taught at 𝗖ance Po for nearly a decade. What is 𝗖ance Po?
So Sciences Po is one of France's oldest and most well-known universities. They specialize in sort of the humanities, political science, and I teach at the School of Management and Innovation. And obviously not right now because I'm in like a research sort of book mode. But when I was teaching, I taught a class called Business Model Innovation and sort of emerging business models. And that was like a really fun class as a part of their Masters of Finance and Economics and as a part of their Masters of Innovation and Business Design.
So who are the students that are in this course? Is this like an elective for them? Is this kind of entry level course, a core course?
So the first couple of years that I taught it, it was an elective course. And then in the last couple of years, it became like a core course, which is really cool. And it's for people that are at some of these various master's tracks. And it really focuses on sort of expanding your understanding of what is happening in the market. And again, peering beyond the big bubbles and the big hype, and really focusing on understanding every time you see a new business or a new app, just asking the very simple question: how is this making money? Who is making money off of this? How is this making money? Who are the consumers? Who are the customers? And really forcing yourself to go beyond what you sort of see on the surface and try to figure out the economic benefits or disadvantages of what's happening in the world around us.
So, given how quickly the tech landscape is shifting, especially now, how do you keep the course content relevant? Is this a lot of work for you to prepare this course for a new semester? Is it a full semester course?
Yeah.
Okay. So like you say, okay, one thing is they're going to assess new technology. Who's using the technology? Who's making money? How was it built? What was the vision behind it, the mission? Do you have to like rebuild your course content every time you teach this course?
Okay, so here is sort of the secret of this course, which is why it's so popular and why I love it so much, which is basically I come in and I say, here are the fundamental questions you need to ask when you are going to evaluate an industry. And then what we do over the course is look through these frameworks of how you analyze industries. Is each student gets to pick something that they absolutely love, ideally, an industry they love, something they're curious about, something that they're interested in. And then over the course of the semester, every week we add sort of a framework of how you look at it. What's an adjacent industry? What are the main business models? What are the disruptors that are happening in that industry? Where are we in terms of the hype cycle? What is the market? And so everyone is sort of doing that for their own picked industry. And then we're all sharing information. And every week people share something that they see. We teach them how to look for weak signals. And so every week we have people saying, I think this is a weak signal in astronomy. I think this is a weak signal in hair care. I think this is a weak signal in gaming. And so you end up having a group of 50 people that I sort of deputize them to also be little digital explorers. And then at the end, the deliverable of the course project is a business idea, whether it's something that they want to do themselves or something they're presenting for a client, whatever sort of, is comfortable for them in terms of their own goals, but they get to say, this is a white space that I think has a lot of potential. And I get to sit and I get to listen to these really smart, creative kids tell me about things that they love. I've had people do things on dehydrated food, on hair care, on AI, on medicine, on pharmaceuticals, on automotive. And so again, I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm saying I want to teach you to go out and find the answers, because the answers are always changing. And so I am updating the frameworks and I'm updating the approaches of how to look for information. So for example, after teaching the class like 2 or 3 times, I realized that nobody had spent time teaching them how to build a knowledge framework, a knowledge management system. So I developed just like a grid, a very simple grid. And I said, when you're looking for information, you want to balance what you're looking for in terms of depth and formats. You can't just be looking at, blog posts or podcasts. You also want to add a few books, a few academic journals, a few documentaries. And it's when you're building out your information pipeline, your innovation pipeline, you want to make sure it's like diverse enough that you can capture all this information. And then we talked about, like note-taking systems and how do you take good notes. And I use a software called Obsidian that I'm obsessed with. And so we're looking at how do you keep notes? How do you schedule your time? And so I found that there was a lot of skill sets underlying the skill sets that people were not being taught. And once you know those skill sets, then it seems like a lot less intimidating to go out into this infinite information ecosystem and find stuff.
So you teach them how to ask questions, what questions to ask, the techniques, you provide the skills, you teach some of these skills, but they basically can pick their own projects and customize the course in any way they want.
Yes. And believe it or not, I always get a lot of pushback because I always say to them, here's everything that I want to know at the end. Like there's a checklist of, like competitive analysis, blah, 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 blah. But how you present it to me is up to you, because when you go and you get a job, your boss isn't always going to give you the exact specification of what they want, or your client is sometimes going to, you're going to have to make some decisions about how to present the final deliverable. And that's a part of it too. And I always get pushback because people are so used to assignments that are just like extra clear.
Yeah.
But I've also had people come back. I've had people build an app as a final project, make a video, do a full report, so it's also really nice to empower them that they can make decisions about what to do with the information that they find as well.
Well, I imagine like lots of these students can talk about the output from this course when they're recruiting for jobs. Like this becomes part of their portfolio.
That's the idea. The idea is the world is changing all the time, but if you know how to read the weak signals, like it's not all overwhelming. If you know the industry and you start to understand these are the big players in the industry, these are the types of innovations, this is a brand innovation, this is a product innovation, this is a revenue innovation, then when you see something come up, it just helps you create a cartography in your brain of like what's going on. And once you have a map, then the terrain is a lot less unfamiliar. You feel a lot more confident taking a step forward or taking a risk. And the fact that every single one of them at the end ends up with an idea,
Yeah.
I think that's really great. But my favorite part is I make them do an exercise at the beginning of each class that takes like 3 minutes, which is I give them a list, like write down 10 things that X, 10 businesses you can start, 10 industries you think could be innovated. And the point of the exercise isn't the answers of the list, it's to actually use the list to pinpoint their blind spots in their thinking. So the first one is come up with 10 businesses that you could start, right? And most of them won't come up with 10. And if we get to 10, we then move to 20, but most of them will not get to that 10. And then when we start to say, well, why didn't you get to 10? They say, well, I don't have money to start a business. I don't have the skills to start a business. And I say, but I never said it's 10 businesses you have money for right now, or it's 10 businesses you have the skill set. I just said 10 businesses you can start. They don't even have to be realistic. You could have said a laundromat on the moon, and that would have been appropriate as an answer. And so they start to understand their biases and how they limit their thinking as well. And so the course is sort of two parts. One part is opening up your brain, your zone of possibility, so you're not, limiting yourself. In design thinking, we call it like premature convergence. You're not like getting things off the table, you're not even examining them. And then the second part is to go out into the world and just be curious and be okay with the discomfort of not knowing.
So you really do teach them to think outside of the box. That's like a big part of this. Like you're looking at what's not on that list.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's such a good way of putting it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. What's Obsidian?
Obsidian is a note-taking app and so much more. And what I love about it is that it has this visual, when you tag your notes as you're going through, it can build a visual map that links your ideas together. So instead of having your notes in like a document and each note is a different document, if I tag my notes like AI, or if I tag my notes financial industry or business or fandoms, then when I look at that map, around the target fandoms, I can see anything that I've listed. So it really allows me to see the evolution of my thinking and the interconnectedness of themes that emerge in my thinking in a way that my brain really likes.
I'd love to talk about some of your writing.
Yes.
Your most recent book is Hustle and Float, Reclaim Your Creativity and Thrive in a World Obsessed with Work. I think the title says it all, but what is this book all about?
So the story of this book was that many years ago, when I came off of my last book tour, I hit burnout. I hit a wall. Now I know it was burnout. At the time, I didn't know what happened. And I was just like, I felt like one day I woke up and like my brain broke. I couldn't think. My hair was falling out. Like it was really scary. It was like a very scary, sad time.
You vividly remember one day you woke up and you felt this. It was different.
I was tired and tired and tired and tired. And then one day I was at the hairdresser, and my hairdresser was like, I don't want to alarm you, but you have bald spots on the back of your head. Your hair is falling out. Horrific.
Yeah.
And then I remember there was just one, yeah, there was, I don't know like the exact date, but I remember there was one day I woke up and I really felt like I was trying to reboot the system and like nothing was happening. I felt like I was just did not have, I just had to hit the bottom of my energy reserves. And it took me a really long time to heal. And it was very scary because I couldn't work and I couldn't write and I couldn't think. And I didn't realize until that moment how much my identity and my sense of self-worth depended on me associating as a writer and a researcher and a producer and a business owner. And like, and really, the way I explained it to my husband at the time was when you even read my bio, right? You say Rahaf is, but I had to grapple with the question, what am I? Who am I if I can't write or work or produce or hustle or research? Rahaf is as a complete sentence. What does that mean to my sense of identity? And as I started like asking that question, it turned into a 3-year research project where I was like, where did we go so wrong in telling people about work? I had done everything that I was supposed to do. I was waking up early. I was hustling. I was grinding. I was going after my goals. I'm really ambitious. I took everyone's advice and it made me sick.
Mhm.
So where did that advice come from and why did it make me sick? And most importantly, why did I continue to follow it even when I knew better, even when people said rest and take a break and, don't pull really late nights? And so Hustle and Float is unpacking all of the stories and the origins of the stories that we tell ourselves about work, about success, about creativity, about performance, about
Hmm.
productivity. And in understanding their origins, I believe you can deprogram yourself from them and you can put in place an ideology of work that is much more aligned with the natural rhythms of your body.
So you published the book in 2019, which was right before COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious. What did reclaiming your creativity in a world obsessed with work mean then in 2019? And how did it evolve through COVID until now?
So I actually think like it was just a smidge early because I think COVID forced so many people to confront some of these issues head
Right.
on.
Yeah.
If you were we were stuck at home and suddenly what did productivity look like? A lot of people got laid off. Who am I without my professional identity? I
Yeah.
think so many people started feeling the benefits of resting. I know in my circles when we were at home, people were like, "Oh, I'm sleeping more and I'm not commuting to work and I feel so much I feel so much more rested than normal." And I think for many people, this forced break created a reckoning with how much some of the pre-existing narratives around work was failing us. And so I found that a lot of people found my book during COVID.
Oh,
So I've actually had such an uptick of people that found my book like, 2021, 2022, 2023. And that was really interesting too, because they also said, well, I have time to read now, whereas before I was working so hard and I was so busy, I didn't even have time to sit down and read a book. So
wow.
I think now we are seeing more the tangible benefits of why it's so important to invest in rest and recovery. You have the World Health Organization that is signaling burnout as a global epidemic. You have research saying about the psychological impact of digital tools on our dopamine, on our adrenaline, on our sleep cycle, on our anxiety. And so I think finally now we're at the stage where society is like, oh, not investing in this. Burnout is really costing us time and money and talent and
Right.
energy. And so all of a sudden now the companies that are finding me in 2024, 2025, they're really interested in how do we make this a core part of our business because they're seeing that burned out employees are just not delivering and they're not helping the business succeed.
The timing is amazing, right? But when you released the book and then COVID forced everyone into this state of balance, if anything, it was the other way. Like some people, like they didn't even know what work was anymore, even though they still had jobs. If they didn't lose their job and they were working from home 5 days a week, and they may have had kids running around and things like that, like I did, it was like chaos. It was like, yeah, who am I? Who am I?
Yes.
Who am I
Yes.
without work? Right? Because you basically, I mean, everyone does this. They define who they are based on what they do. Right? I
Of
do
course.
this. Right? A lot of it is work. If you're not working or you're not in an office anyways, you're not in this hierarchy, there's an obvious hierarchy. Who are you? And it did, for a lot of people, it was very beneficial, actually.
It was just, it's like sometimes this is the difference when you tell someone something, like we've told people all the time, you need better work balance, da da da. Like I was told all the time, rest and do this, but like I had to hit burnout before I could face the
Right.
underlying beliefs
Yeah.
because the burnout forced me to like brought all of these things up. And so for many people, the chaos, the not knowing, being broken out of routine, not knowing what was coming, all of that stuff, it
Yeah.
almost like removed us from the routine of the day and we re-examined everything in with new eyes.
And things are so different now. Like I still go into my office, not full time, but I go in, a couple days a week, like a lot of people. And it's everything is different. There's just this like corporate office culture is just, well, at least in my environment, we've sort of let go of that, right? There's just this understanding that sometimes we're in the office and sometimes we're not, and we're like basically the same person. When you see me on Zoom, I'm the same person you see in the office. There's not this same kind of like you only see me at work and I'm one person, and then at home I'm somebody different. It like kind of lowered that barrier.
I think it humanized people a lot. You saw people's homes, you saw people's kids. I think it's sort of
Yeah.
so in Hustle and Float, there is a chapter where I talk about the myth of the ideal worker, right? Which is the profile that emerged in the 1950s, right? Right at the height of like corporate America, where the ideal worker was somebody who comes to work, is only an employee, is only focused on the job, and just is fully devoted 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever. And like they don't exist, like nothing exists for them outside of the job. And for a long time, that was the ideal of what like an employee was. And I think COVID really broke that because we were at home. People had kids. People had elder care. People had mess and noise and chaos and doctor's appointments. And it was done in a way where I think, at least for the people in my circle, it really reminded all of us that we're just like humans behind these corporate titles and that, it was okay to bring a little bit of that messiness back. And I had many people that just had these really big realizations about what was important and the role that work had played before in their lives and the type of role they would want their work to play post COVID. And I think that we're still seeing as a society some of those ripple effects still.
How do you decide what you're going to study? Like emerging technology, cultural trends. How do you decide what you're going to study? Is it just curiosity? I know a lot of projects come through companies, right? So you have a project, you're going to do the research. What about other things? Like how do you decide what's important enough for you to pay attention to it?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think it's like anything that makes me go like, huh, I want to know more, or something that I don't understand.
Right.
Usually it's something that I don't understand. It's like, for example, I was looking at like trad wives. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
When I felt like a trad wife content came across, my first instinct was, huh, that's really interesting. I want to know more. And then my problem is that I become like obsessed when I want to know more. And then I'll like map out the entire trad wife ecosystem and I'll watch like hundreds of hours of videos and I'll deep dive into it. But generally it's something that I think I don't fully understand that. I don't fully understand how that works. And I think it's a desire from a sociological lens, from a technology lens, from an economic lens to understand why is somebody choosing to do this from a place really of no judgment, genuine curiosity. That's also very important. If you go in with judgment, you'll
Right.
miss all the insights anyway. And so to really go in and just to be like, wow, these are people that are presenting this message and doing this way. And for me, the fact that I'm a digital anthropologist and not a regular anthropologist is because the fact that people are so willing to share so much of their lives online, it's like millions of doorways into
Yeah.
millions of lives. And you don't even have to knock on the door. You can just like peek in the window and someone's there telling you their kitchen, their closet, their house, their
Right.
work. And I find that also like endlessly fascinating to think of the profile behind it. And whether it's a trad wife, whether it's a conspiracy theorist, whether it is somebody who loves writing fan fiction, like fan fiction, I think is also so fascinating to me. The quality, not all of it, but when you find really high quality stuff, you're like, somebody spent hundreds of hours to write a novel length. And as a writer, I know exactly how hard it is to write a book from cover to cover, but somebody is doing that for free for IP that they don't own, simply for the joy of sharing with a very specific community. That I thought was absolutely fascinating. And I just then want to like dive into the community.
So you've said that technology is never neutral and that it carries ideology. Can
Yeah.
you unpack what this means and provide a concrete example of everyday technology that reflects some specific ideology?
Sure. So if you take something like X or, Twitter,
Yep.
so the ideology behind Twitter is that at the beginning, not now, but at the beginning when it was first invented, it was first released, it was that short form communication is the preferred method of communication.
Hmm?
That's an ideology. Shorter is better, right?
All right.
In
Yeah.
a PDF reader, there was one I was using the other day. When I pulled in a PDF, like a long PDF, a little pop-up appeared on the top and it said, "Hey, this looks like a long document. Save time by generating a summary." So that is a belief that I can get the equal level of insight and learning by generating a summary, right? If
Right.
you look at Microsoft Teams, for example, or Zoom, and I talk a lot about this in my work, we have that little status, that teeny tiny, like little status circle that's green. And I always say to people, isn't it interesting that it doesn't say, "Oh, I'm working, I'm leading, I'm thinking." It says, "I'm available." Because in our culture, being available and being seen as at your desk and always available is a core part of presenting as a highly productive employee. And that is reflected in the default of how that tool is labeled.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting way to think about this. Like almost like the UI decisions that were made for all kinds of technology have ideology baked into them because they had to make some decision. They had to call it something, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But that decision is based on their idea of what their worldview is. Like
right.
every technology that you use, every app, every device, everything inside of it has someone's belief of what a productive day looks like,
Right.
what a successful person looks like, what they want the future to look like. And so
Right.
even if you look at things like, like Facebook back in the day, like Facebook as one of the original social networks, right? At the time, that belief system was that everyone should be connected, that you should be able to connect to everyone.
Right.
And so that's one layer of it, right? There's also the other layers where you start looking at things like funding models. So when you have Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn, when he's talking about blitz scaling, right? Blitz scaling as a funding approach for startups where you put a lot of money in, like hundreds of millions of dollars in at the beginning,
Hmm?
in order to monopolize the market, in order to just be so productive, like Uber and Airbnb and all of these things. Like before they were profitable, they just had investor money. They were running on investor money, right? And the goal was to just dominate the entire market, even if the business model hadn't quite been figured out yet. So that's an ideology that believes in market domination. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just an ideology that we're seeing play out, right? And
Yeah.
so understanding what these ideologies are gives you like a really interesting insight into the values, into the intentions, and into sort of like where we're going when you start to say, okay, what is the values system of these apps or of these tools?
Yeah. The first thing you mentioned was X, Twitter, short communication, right? Then you
Yeah.
had a PDF that, AI was willing to summarize that for you. It seems like in general, that ideology of shorter and quicker is better is everywhere now, right? That's one of the big draws of like generative AI. I can just summarize everything. I don't have to read anything anymore, right?
Yeah.
Shorter is better.
I
So,
call it the justification of everything, and it is like the biggest bane of my existence. But the reason that is happening, if you really think about it culturally, is that for many of us, before a lot of these technologies were widespread, we were actually taught to engage with information in a finite ecosystem, right? You were in a classroom, you have a set reading list of the things you need to read, the textbook chapters you need to know. It was very clear the boundaries of knowledge that you need to have in order to be rewarded with mastery. Congratulations, you passed the course, you wrote this exam, you wrote the reading. You read the book, you read the newspaper, you
right.
watched the evening news, beginning, middle, end. So then we threw people into an infinite information ecosystem where there's no end.
There's no
So
end.
if people still think there's an end, so they still have this underlying assumption like, oh, if I just read a little bit, I'll get to it all. And that's a fundamental fallacy. So it's much better to actually just go deep and slow and be consistent and build up a knowledge base that way. But that is against the cultural assumptions that we have of wanting to know it all.
It's like a never-ending search for endless information.
Yes. I mean, I saw an ad on TikTok the other day, it like went a bit viral, but it was like some girl said, oh, it was an ad for this like summarizing app. And some girl said, I read 50 books a week. I'll show you how. And it was literally like she typed in the title of the book and then the AI gave her like 3 sentences. And I'm like, are we
Wow.
saying that 3 sentences is the equivalent of reading an entire book? And from a strategy perspective, when you think about emerging markets, like right now, the trend is justification, justification. But in a couple of years, when we have really complex technology at play, who are going to be the people that are going to be best positioned to actually make decisions about it? It's going to be the people that have taken the time to develop nuanced expertise.
Right.
So we also have this like short-term, long-term consequence that I'm seeing play out with Gen AI right now, where we're pushing everyone to summarize, shorten, use AI to like reduce your ability of like cognitive functioning, strategy, and analysis. But that's short-term gain. Long-term,
Right.
there's going to be consequences to having, what was that? There was like that viral tweet that went around that said you better keep yourself in excellent health because your future doctor is currently using ChatGPT to cheat their way through med school. Do you know, like it's sort of like that's the vibe.
So you've spoken about digital well-being in
Mhm.
your talks. What are some tangible ways that individuals or teams can put that into practice? Digital well-being.
So for me, going back to like the unwritten culture of technology is we have to really address the expectations that we have to always be reachable and to always be available.
Mhm.
And I think nothing has been more damaging to modern day work culture than the digital labor and disruptions associated with all of the tools that we're supposed to use for communication. We know this now, we've known this for years, but the brain is not designed to multitask. And every single time you are trying to sit at your desk and do a job, learn something, write something, tackle a project, if you are being constantly interrupted with notifications, every single interruption, it takes you 23 minutes to get back on task.
Mm.
So you're just losing so much time. It adds more stress. It drains your cognitive resources. It makes you more likely to make mistakes.
Mhm.
And when you ask people why, it's because the expectation of being always available.
Right.
When I work with teams on digital culture stuff, we sit and we say, let's make the invisible visible. What are the unwritten expectations? Let's make them explicit. And I say, and I go around the table and I'll say, what do you expect is a reasonable time to hear back from somebody after they've emailed you?
Mhm.
And some people will say 2 hours, some people will say 30 minutes, some people will say 3 business days. And then we have to, as a team, negotiate what is an appropriate standard. Because if you know that I'm going to get back to you by the end of business day, not in 20 minutes, then I can take 60 minutes in my day to focus on a task without worrying about the social consequences of being seen as not being available.
Okay. So what's the takeaway here? Designated amounts of time to dedicate to tasks. Like I'm going to spend 60 minutes, 120 minutes on this task. I'm not going to be checking Slack and my text. I'm not going to do all these other things. I'm going to have a designated focused time for specific things throughout my day. Is that sort of like the takeaway?
The takeaway is you have to understand what are the unwritten social obligations that are running the way that your team is using these technologies.
Mhm.
I can tell you, I can be like, Brandon, just take 60 minutes and, have a focus session. But
Right.
if your boss expects you to answer them in 10 seconds on Slack, and if your team expects you to answer them immediately because you don't have a set understanding of what is an urgency and what is an important task and what can wait, then the advice, you're never going to be able to take it because the advice clashes with the social team obligations that are going to override whatever you need to do to be super productive. So
Mm.
that's one. The other thing is a more deeper cultural level, which is an understanding that real rest and recovery is a core part of high performance. And many of us staying connected to our emails, to social media, doom scrolling, that when we're doing that, we're not actually letting our bodies get into a state of rest, because all of this influence and all of these inputs and stimuli, they are basically like jerking our nervous systems around and keeping us in a state of fight or flight. Even if you're on vacation, even if it's a Sunday, even if you're in bed, if your nervous system is totally out of whack because you are consuming the totality of the emotional spectrum of every single person on the planet all the time, from famine to natural disaster to outrage to grief to joy, like it is, our nervous systems were not designed to do that.
Yeah.
And so we have to really sort of reclaim our bodies and say, if we want to bring our best selves to work, if we want to bring our best selves at home, real true disconnection and nervous system regulation are going to be foundational skills that we're going to need to put into place. But again, I'm not going to regulate my system at home if my boss expects me to answer emails outside of working hours.
Right. Let's talk about social networks, social media platforms. What role do you think social media should play in someone's life? And how has your relationship to these platforms changed over time? Any social media platform.
So I think that the research that has come up around what it's doing to young people is really concerning. So I don't have kids, but I don't want to give an advice to people to have kids, but I'm sort of agreeing with the experts that are saying that we should be delaying social media use up until the teens, just because our brains, the brains of kids are still developing. So we'll just put kids out of the equation. Let's talk just like as adults.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that if used with intention and if used with a sense of purpose, I think social networks can actually be fantastic and they can be great. I love my social networks. I love spending time on them. I get a lot of value from them. They bring me a lot of benefits. I learn a lot. I connect with interesting people. It's always like very enriching for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that is because I have been laser focused on what I want from these platforms.
Okay.
I choose the accounts that I follow. I'm very clear, right? When I go onto TikTok, I'm not just randomly aimlessly scrolling. I know that when I go on TikTok, I want to see content that is interesting, educational, funny, and informative to me. And so for me, and I set my timer for like, 15, 20 minutes, and it's like, that's the time that I get on it. And like, then that's it.
Yeah.
And so for me in that capacity, I get a lot of value on it. I've met a lot of people in real life from TikTok. I find a lot of interesting research projects, books, things that people are talking about. But I think if you let the app control your life, if you let the ideology of a forever, never-ending feed, the ideology of an algorithm choosing what is relevant for you instead of you having a role in shaping the algorithm, then I think you're going to have a bad time.
An example is like endlessly viewing a TikTok reel after reel after reel. I'm just going to consume whatever this is giving me. I'm just going to keep going.
Smart.
That's not intent, right? But you should come with some other intent, education, entertainment, whatever it is. That's the idea. What about specific social media platforms that you're using? Do you use specific platforms? You mentioned TikTok. What else?
So I use TikTok. I use Instagram. I'm not on X anymore. I'm not really on Facebook anymore. I'm on Substack a lot. I really like Substack. I think we're moving now from like openly available information into more of like a gated web. I'm starting to see a lot more things going back to being like behind paywalls and things like that. I'm seeing communities go on Discord or go on like private WhatsApp groups. So I have been focused on finding like my people, groups of people. Where are the writers at? Where are the researchers at? Where are like the nice, kind people that just want to try to get through their day with their sanity? And I'm trying to find those spots.
Okay.
And really what I do is every year as a part of my annual review, I like score my experience on like the ROI or I call it the ROA, the return on attention, which is how do I feel after engaging with these apps on a scale of 1 to 10. And if it's not like a 9, then it's like, what is the adjustment and why? And for example, the last time I did it on Instagram, the score was a bit lower. And I realized it was because I hated the new algorithmic changes that was like the feed. I was never seeing the people that I actually cared about in my feed.
Right.
So to combat that, I went into Instagram. I made a list of favorites, which is the list of people whose content I genuinely want to engage with. And then when I go into Instagram, that's the list I check first because I don't care what the algorithm says. I know whose content I want to see, which now means Instagram is not brands or influencers or AI slop. It's literally a list of my friends. And
Right.
I made a commitment that I was going to engage with comments more. I wasn't just going to scroll through. I was going to go and I was going to say, I love your sandwich, or your vacation looked really nice, or what, I was really going to try to engage more. And
Yeah.
just that simple thing, sort of saying to the algorithm, no, you don't get to decide whose content I see. I'm going to decide on Instagram. That brought my satisfaction way up. And now it's like what it was supposed to be, which is like the
Hmm.
people that I genuinely care about. I do want to see pictures of their vacations and what they're doing and their kids and the things they care about because these are the people in my network.
That's a great example of intent. You have a lot of self-control. The fact that you actually did that and do that on a regular basis is amazing.
It's because I can't be trusted. It's because I know myself so well. I always say to my husband, like, you have to plan for your troll self, not for
Yeah.
your like highest good self, but for like your lowest will control, your lowest sense of self, the off of a plane, jet lagged, zero willpower. Like, what is that person gonna do? And that's what I have to plan for. So I don't have a self-control. I just have a lot of self-understanding in
Yeah.
my weaknesses. So I design things specifically knowing how big of weaknesses that I that I have.
So you wear a lot of hats: executive director at the Red Thread Institute, faculty at Sciences Po, author, speaker. How do you maintain balance and creative energy across all of these roles? How do you maintain balance?
I mean, I think I've just sort of understood that like those hats, I'm not wearing them all at the same time, right? It's like it kind of goes in ebbs and flows, and I can't do everything all the time. So, as a follow-up to Hustle and Float, I sort of started developing this system that I call humane productivity that came out as a desire for me to try to build a system because I love systems, but a system that was flexible enough that could handle the chaos and the changing priorities of my life. And for me, again, it really goes back to intent. I have very clear goals that I want to accomplish by the end of the year,
Hmm?
but those goals have to be done within a container where I'm still sleeping and spending time with my family and treating my body nicely and eating nourishing food. And like those are sort of my non-negotiables. And so I have had to accept that some weeks I don't get to work on my manuscript. Some writers will tell you have to work, you have to,
Every day.
work every single day on your
Yeah.
writing, or you're just never going to be. It's like I've written 5 books now. Like I think I can safely say you don't need to write.
Mhm.
I've written a poetry collection, I've written a fiction novel. Like, you don't need to write every single day, but it's the understanding that I don't put pressure or guilt on myself of saying I have to do this every day. So there are weeks where I say, okay, this week's going to be a work heavy week, a travel heavy week. So I'm not going to write as much. Next week, I'm going to make up for that. So I'm going to, so it's really being gentle with myself and also acknowledging things like in the winter months, I like to stay at home more because it's like dark and cold. And
Yeah.
so I know I'll do more writing in the winter months, and I know I'll do more networking in the summer months when the city's open and everything's so nice. And so I've really learned to just pay attention to the cycles of my energy, the cycles of the season, the cycles of my career, and to not let this productivity propaganda that we have been indoctrinated with that tell you that you have to have the same gym routine every week, the same writing routine. Like, consistency is not doing the same thing in the same way every single day. Consistency is doing whatever is going to be the best for you in whatever way that that you can show up that day. So if I show up one day and I only write 200 words, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's like this idea of just the rest, and the being humane actually helps you produce more, because I've been more productive than ever. And now I'm very French now. I take like August off and I like take
Oh,
these
wow.
long, French
Great.
luxurious
Yeah.
vacations
Yeah.
because I learned that from the French.
Ready for the lightning round?
Yes, let's go.
30 seconds each.
Okay. Wow.
A digital habit you've recently rethought.
Okay, I used to be very bad, and I used to sort of check social media, like, when I woke up in the morning
Right.
as an excuse, as a way to wake up in the morning, but I've read that it really spikes your cortisol, so now I wait at least 2 hours before I pick up my phone.
Oh, that's great. What's your favorite piece of tech?
My phone.
Favorite book you've read in the last year?
I have 2 that I really loved. Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet by Thich Nhat Hanh, probably one of the most transformative, influential books on my thinking. I think every single person should read it. And No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz about internal family systems therapy of how to like talk to yourself internally. Also very game changing, very tangible changes both of those books have had on my life.
That was cool. What's something you changed your mind about recently?
Something that I've changed my mind about recently, whether or not protests are actually effective. I used to think they were, but I'm starting to think they're not anymore.
Okay. That's another whole discussion. What's your favorite band right now?
I don't have a favorite band. I just love listening to Lo-Fi Girl on YouTube nonstop. It's
What is it?
always on.
Lo-fi girl. What is it? Oh, I see. Oh, music for all situations.
Well, Lo-Fi Girl, it's like this like channel, but she's actually based like the art. It's based from Lyon. So I found her
Oh,
years ago. She's become a little bit of a cult phenomenon, and it's just like really chill lo-fi music that it's always on in our house, like 24 hours a day.
nice. What's an activity you do outside of work?
I like writing fiction. I like baking. I like have a lot of grandma hobbies. Apparently, you hit 40 and you get really into birding. We've been
Oh,
loving
wow.
in our house, not like we don't go out and do it. We're not there yet, but we live in the countryside, so we've been seeing and learning a lot about. My gosh, Mesa sounds so lame, but listen, birds are really cool. That's all I'm going to say.
You take pictures of them? Is that part of it?
We haven't. Okay, we have an app. So Cornell University has this awesome app called Merlin. And you open the app and you can record the call of the bird, and then it tells you
Oh, wow.
what bird it is. And so we've had like hoopos and like barn owls and hawk. It's just so I just didn't know. I just didn't know anything about birds. And now that I'm learning about them, between like learning about birds and learning about flowers and learning about bees and other pollinators, it's been a bit of a nature kick. I'm learning a lot about permaculture these days too. So
It would be cool if that app could tell you what the birds are saying. That would be amazing. What are they saying?
sometimes I wonder, sometimes we're like, that's such a beautiful bird song that I wonder if they're like, I hate all of you, get out of my territory. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
that would be kind of funny.
Human alert. They're all saying the humans are humans are around.
Okay, well, actually, okay, sorry. I know this is a lightning round, but I'm gonna tell you one quick thing. We have learned that the sparrows that live in our barn have a very particular bird sound they make when the neighbor's cat comes into the yard, to the point that when we
Yeah.
hear it, we know she's coming into. They're all like, the cat's here, the cat's here. And we know it's the
Thing.
cat because they don't do it for our tiny small dog. They've understood
Oh,
it's not a threat. They only do it for the cat. Well, thank you. Sorry, I know we went off like not lightning round,
no,
more
no, it's
like
fine. It's
slow
fine.
round. But
It's great. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. And good luck on the new book.
thank you. I appreciate it.
What is it actually called? Humane Productivity? Is that what it's called?
Right now it's called Humane Productivity, subtitle to be decided, but I just finished the like the second draft, so it's almost done, which is
Yeah.
very exciting.
You need a very descriptive subtitle. Like
I
your-
know. Yeah, I know, as always. So
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot.
take care.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe. More interviews and demos coming soon.